Welcome everyone to Legion Gaming. I'm your host Donnie, and as always I'm joined by co-host Deucy.
Yahoo!
And today we are joined by one of our favorite special guests who's quite frequent at this point. We have Vito, the 8-bit barrister. Vito, how are you today, sir?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're pretty I'm pretty fantastic. I don't know about Deucy. I don't want to speak for both of us.
I'm running at 85, 90%, not 100. I don't know.
There you go.
Start of a cold or something. You know, it's that season.
Yeah, well,
totally.
it's a little bit of deja vu because you were sick like a month ago.
A month or two,
so
yeah.
You were up at 100, now you're back to 85.
Yeah.
I'm 100% like always. Vito, you sound like 100%.
Yeah. Pretty good.
I think we're pretty good.
No complaints.
Yeah. So for today's episode, we're doing something a little bit more fun because it's going to be Deucy's birthday in about a week as of this recording, but it'll be sort of his birthday request episode.
It'll be in the past as of release.
It'll be in the past, back to the future, as we like to say. We're ranking all the Mario Kart games, so this is going to be the most definitive ranker you can ever imagine. We're going to rank 10 Mario Kart games from basically the best to worst.
Yeah, I felt like as a birthday gift to me, I had to do the series that's most near and dear to my heart, as we enjoy saying on this show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been with this series since game one.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite series as well. I'm sure it's one of your favorite, Vito.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's everyone's favorite, frankly. Like, it's such an easy series to get into. So this was an easy topic to cover.
Yeah.
We didn't have to, Deucy was like, we could do it for my birthday. I was like, we could have done it for any reason. Really.
Yeah.
It made perfect sense. But before we get to all that goodness, what have you guys been playing? Vito, do you want to kick us off here?
Sure. So I'll talk about the game I most recently finished first. As you know, I come down to this area to visit my parents and also to hang out with you guys and do the podcast. So I bring my Steam Deck, and I just finished Plucky Squire.
Oh, I really loved that one.
Yeah,
It was a PS Plus game, and I ran right through it. It was really fun.
Yeah, I did really like it. I liked the aesthetic. I liked how you were in the storybook, and the loading would be a page turning, and then the pop out into the 3D. Although I did have a nitpick where it got a little bit dialogue heavy at certain times, where I'm just tapping A because I wanted to keep playing. It's
got kind of a fairy tale whimsical story that it's really fun and sort of self-aware. And then it just gets to a point where, like, all right, I just want to play the game. Or, it's a little too much exposition here.
Yeah, no, I really did enjoy it, and I thought it was definitely one of the better games that came out in 2024. But the game that I've been kind of sinking the most time into, that I literally can't wait to talk about right now, is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
Yeah, that one's really good. I've been wanting to play that.
It's Skyrim in the sense of the mechanics and things like that, but it's very much a medieval life simulator where if your weapon gets worn down, you got to go smith a new weapon or go to the sharpening wheel. If you need potions to heal yourself or anything, you need to go to the alchemy lab and brew your own potions. And the story's really good, the acting's really good, it's really funny at times. I got into the side mission where I think I told you it was almost like if The Hangover took place in the 1400s. It was just really funny. I was laugh out loud funny. It's definitely if the year would end right now, it'd be my game of the year.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's setting a precedent right there.
Yeah. I know we're only in March though.
Yeah.
Medieval life simulator. Would that mean all of us would have already died of old age by now?
Probably.
Yeah,
probably the case. Yeah, and also I know that game has a mechanic as well where it's like if you're bloodied up and dirty, the NPCs have a poorer perception of you and thus aren't willing to speak to you as much, which
that
I
makes
find.
sense.
So you kind of have to keep your clothes clean.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, it's also funny because sometimes you won't. There's like a little icon that'll tell you if you stink or you're dirty or whatever, but sometimes I don't notice it, and I'll go into the town, I'll talk to an NPC, and they'll be like, "Oh, you stink. Take a bath," and they're like, "Oh man,"
It sounds hilarious. I want to get to that game. I put a little bit of time in the original because it was like $4 on Steam, and it was well worth that.
Yeah.
But I've heard nothing but great things about 2. It's another one of those big games that I have to commit to, and I'm running through a few big games as it is.
Yeah, and at least Henry knows how to read at the outset of this game, unlike the first one.
That's good.
Yeah.
He's a little more literate.
Yeah. So that's what I've been playing the most recently.
Yeah.
So,
Deucy, what have you been diving into?
A few things here and there, actually. I was still sort of trying to search for my next big game after I finished Mafia, and instead I stuck with Stardew Valley. I'm up to 90 hours now on that. I've started into year 3. It's weird because after year 2, I don't know if that's supposed to be the end of the narrative that they were giving, because you get visited by your grandpa, who's the one that gave you the farm in the first place, and it's his ghost, and he's telling you how proud he is of what you've done with the farm, which I did really well with the farm, and I don't know if that message changes if you didn't do well. Like,
That'd be kind of cool. The farmer force ghost.
yeah, if he's sitting there going, "You only have $5 to your name. What are you doing?" I don't know. I was doing really well by that point. I also got into, because I was listening to a podcast that covers movies, and they covered the very first Fast and the Furious. So it gave me the itch to get back into Need for Speed. And I ended up reinstalling Need for Speed Unbound, and I've been really enjoying that again. I had to kind of remind myself of the play style of it. It's very arcadey compared to a lot of the racing games I've been doing recently. And but yeah, I remember putting it down because it was starting to get difficult with the cops always on your ass and everything.
Yeah,
but
and the upgrades are really expensive to mitigate that too.
Yeah, it's weird how, like, I feel like I don't have full control of what I want to do because I have to save money for the end of the week, quote unquote, to enter into this really big race. But I have learned more efficient ways of dodging the cops, even when I'm up at like 4.5 flames and everything. I'm like, okay, I don't know if they've introduced patches that made it easier.
They might have, because that's what I was curious about, because I put a lot of time at launch, and I got the same sort of wall that you did, where the cops were just way too hard at certain wanted levels.
And now I don't get really busted or anything. I don't know if they've like incorporated more ramps or something, because it's hilarious. If you just find one on a side road and jump off of it, all of a sudden the cops immediately lose you. They're like, what the?
Oh,
we can't do that.
Because I would do that tactic to try to avoid them, or, kind of go in a different direction, and it would kind of work, but it wasn't that distinct.
No, yeah. I mean, the chase meter doesn't immediately end, but they also don't immediately find you again. It's a real easy way to dodge them now.
Because I could not make that happen before. Like, it was a struggle.
Yeah, I always like ducked home inside when I got my flame meter up to almost like 3, which is middle of the road. But I was like, no, this is too hard, even at 3. But now I can go a little further and get a little more money, luckily. I also finally started a big game. I've had it downloaded for the longest time, and the sequel's coming out soon. But I started Chernobylite, which is kind of right up my alley. I enjoy the history of like the Chernobyl disaster and everything. And this game, its training mission starts you on the night of the explosion. You're like a scientist that's in the power plant, and then you sort of jump a little bit ahead to the present day, and you're trying to build up this base in the ruins of the city, and you're trying to find your wife, but they also incorporate a lot of like what would you say, not paranormal, but like fantastical things. Like there's a whole new element that was created with the explosion called Chernobylite itself, and it allows you to travel through portals and everything, but it also takes you into this crazy portal looking world where monsters will start coming out of it. And the whole mission so far is you're trying to gather a crew, and then you're trying to get back into the power plant and find if your wife is still there, or maybe she's trapped in the other zone or something. Yeah,
I really want to play that, because you and I have been talking about that, and even before we started recording, we were talking about how it compares to Stalker 2, which I had a rough time with at launch, to the point where I refunded it in the first 2 hours because I was just kind of over some of the mechanics, and they've patched it since then. But Chernobylite, you and I have talked about, it feels like for the last like 6 months, because it's been on PS Plus, and you finally took a dive into it, and the more you talk about it, and the more I was looking, it was like, this actually sounds like what I was hoping Stalker 2 would do for me. And it also has these sort of interdimensional portal twists to the story, which I always am a big fan of. Yeah. Is that what you've been playing, Deucy? Just those big ones?
Yeah, really. Like I said, I the majority of the time is Stardew. Oh, I get into Guns of Fury a little here and there too.
Yeah, I'm still making my way through that. Yeah, that's what I've been playing.
Is that the like Metroidvania kind of Metal Slug?
Yeah.
I need to get that. It looks really good.
It's really inexpensive. I don't know if it's still on sale, but it was $15. We talked about in the last episode where we covered the rebirth of beat 'em ups. But Guns of Fury was the game we mentioned. It was like $15 for a typical price. It was on sale for $13. It's well worth that. I've put in quite a bit of time into it, which Metroidvania is really easy for me to get into. And this one, it really does test your skills with some of the bosses, because like I mentioned in the last episode, there's no leveling system. So you can't really rely on like grinding or, getting your XP and leveling up. This is purely just, you better hope that you've learned the patterns and finish these bosses, because some are like a bullet hell shooter in some instances.
I do appreciate that they give you the little life and I guess you could call it magic points, but it's like your grenade points or something.
You have an ammo meter, which is sort of like your magic equivalent, and you have your grenades or bombs, as they call them, which are like your throwables.
And you get sometimes you can find upgrades for those because you actually start with only like 50 HP, which could go pretty quick. But now, and then you only get like 5 increments of 5 at a time, but it isn't too harsh. Even though, like Don said, the bosses are bullet hell, I have only died maybe twice total in that game.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, it's like I said, they're totally fair because I've gotten pretty far into the game now. Like I have like 81% of the map completed, so I'm getting that point where it's like I'm starting to have to remember where I couldn't progress before to get to that point. And the bosses, once I learn them, they're not as bad. You have so many tools and different gun types that you find, and you do have those health upgrades that help a lot. But I haven't felt like it's been unfair so far. It's been difficult, but it's been, manageable.
One thing I wish they would add maybe in a patch is like being able to change weapons and throwables on the fly.
I wish, because it does kind of suck to menu and have to swap them out. And then, there are some small quality of life things I wish they could have done. Like sometimes it does feel like it's hard to change equipment or swap it out. I wish there was like a quick heal button or something instead of using the item from the menu. Like even if, I don't know if everything's mapped. I don't think ZR is. I don't know. But it feels like there could be something on the D-pad, like for a quick swap for items or something like that, But that's a small nitpick. Overall, I've been really enjoying it, and for $15, it's a very competent Metroidvania game. It's really, really good. The other big game I've been into, and I've been talking about it for a couple of episodes now, but I finally finished, was Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth. Last episode, I think I was at level or chapter 12. Going to 13. So I was like, oh, it's not much left of the game. And I think there was like a solid 10 or 12 hours after that because the last chapter especially is like just a crazy sort of gauntlet endurance. And I was glad that I leveled up and grinded before because I could see it being really, really hellish and difficult. But I also think that they made it so much of a gauntlet at the end because if you're under leveled, that's how you would level up and get, so you're probably up for the last bosses. I was so leveled up beforehand that I only got like a couple bosses where kind of having that part where it's like, a little bit tense where it's like, one wrong move, I could die.
Yeah.
Just restart this whole boss battle. Like you fight a giant shark and a giant squid who's sort of the guardian of this cultist island, which is great.
Naturally,
yeah. But, those bosses were difficult. And then the final bosses weren't as bad as I thought. But I'm very pleased with the game. Like I think I ended up with like 55 and a half hours or something like that. And there's still side content I could technically pursue if I wanted to. I probably won't because it's all just side stuff and not totally necessary. But I really love this story. The story is really good. It did a really good job of introducing wrinkles to the story and like twists while still kind of being humorous and having its sort of its melodrama deeply tied in there. Like there's some moments where it's like it's really cheesy, but you tend to appreciate it because this game really just goes full bore in the fact that it's a video game, so it's not meant to be this totally tight-knit story without holes in it,
Huh.
But I loved it. I think it's definitely an early contender for game, at least for my game of the year list. I don't know if I'll put it at number 1 yet, obviously, because there's a lot of big releases coming out this year that I think might be bigger.
Yeah.
But Like a Dragon was freaking amazing. I really am looking forward to the pirate one that just came out in the last week or two.
That one really looks awesome to me just because it's not what do you call it, turn-based combat.
Yeah.
I have a problem a lot with turn-based combat because it just doesn't hold my attention. But the Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii looks really awesome, mainly because of that. Well, it's bat what crazy, but the combat just looks a lot more my style.
Yeah, there's also I'm pretty sure there's naval battles in there as well. Like that's the thing with these games. Like they have all these side modes that you wouldn't expect, and they're really well done and they're fun, which is why I enjoyed Infinite Wealth so much because honestly, like there's not many times where a Japanese RPG or turn-based combat game will hold my attention all the way through. Sometimes it's like I'll get through 10 hours, few hours. This game, like the combat was so fun and engaging that it just really was what hooked me the whole time because you have so many options. Like you can level up your the bonds with your party members so that they'll also assist you in combat. Like they'll actually do an extra hit when an enemy's downed, or you can combo into them. So like when you knock back an enemy after hitting them, they'll also hit them too. So it just introduces these new combat mechanics that really make the game really fun to play and grind through, because that's what stops me in some JRPGs. It's like the combat isn't fun enough to just sit there over and over, battle after battle,
It's funny because I look for games that go back to turn-based. I haven't played much of Final Fantasy 15 or 16 or even the Final Fantasy 7 remakes because I don't care for the new style that RPGs are going
it's
in.
more action oriented.
I was so grateful that Mario and Luigi Brothership went back to turn-based, and it sounds like these Like a Dragon ones I could get into.
I think you'd like them. I think the only thing I would preface is that they do take a little bit to get going, like 4 to 5 hours minimum.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just such a slow unfolding story.
So did the original Yakuza.
Exactly, right. So that's the thing. It's like, it makes sense that like the pace starts off slow, and it does a good job of introducing more mechanics as you go along. And then there's a point where you definitely have to grind. Like there's some parts where it'll warn you, like, be level 36 or above, which I think is great. But then you do have to grind. So as long as you're okay with that, like the slow start and having to grind in those dungeons I was telling you about, it's a really fun time. Like I enjoyed the hell out of this game, obviously, because I put in like 50 plus hours into the damn thing in the last like month. All right, guys. So I think now it's time to definitively rank all of the Mario Kart games. All right, friends, we're here at our main events. We have quite a big duty today. We're going to rank all the Mario Kart games from 1 to 10 and give our best thoughts. And then at the end, how we've set this up is that we're going to go through each game chronologically. So we'll start with Super Mario Kart on Super Nintendo, and we'll go all the way to Mario Kart Tour, which is the most recent release. And each of us have created our own lists from 1 to 10. We haven't really showed it before we were starting ranking it, just because we went on to influence ether, so it was kind of blind beforehand. But each game will get points based on their rank. So for instance, the first game that's at number 1 gets 10 points, second place gets 9, all and so on until we get to number 10, which gets 1 point. At the end, we total all our scores up, and we have the definitive Mario Kart rank. So I think this will be a really fun episode. I think it'd be a great time. So the first game we're going to get into is the OG of OGs. It's Super Mario Kart, released in September 1992 on the Super Nintendo. Guys, what do you remember about this one? Because this one was a big game for me. It's one of my foundational Super Nintendo games.
I'm pretty sure it was like my 4th or 5th ever Super Nintendo game. Back when I wasn't just purchasing games left and right. I had to wait for birthdays, Christmas, allowance
money. We were kids without money.
Yeah. I can't remember if I rented it first. I might have rented it first, but it was very shortly after that I definitely wanted it. I think I got it for Christmas, and I just never put it down. That one was constantly in my Super Nintendo, and when friends would come over, that was what we went to first usually, especially with the battle mode and things like that. It was just this whole new way of playing racing games that before then I didn't really want to play multiplayer racing games.
It was, yeah, I didn't have much exposure to racing games before this because, they were kind of basic, right? Like I remember Night Driver on Atari. That's the one I remember I played with my dad, where it's just, it's on the Atari. So you have a car on a lane going back and forth, right?
Basically like a Rad Racer on Nintendo.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. It was just like Rad Racer. That's an even better example for it. But Mario Kart was something that I could relate to because I had Mario characters, which is funny because this game originated without the Mario aesthetic at all. It was just supposed to be like a kind of a kart racer that was multiplayer centric.
It really even started as an F-Zero 2. Mm-hmm. Like it was supposed to be a sequel to that, and then they said, well, let's start morphing it a little more.
Yeah, which I think is for the better because also F-Zero had kind of a higher difficulty curve, I guess we'll say.
Yeah.
Whereas this is meant to be a little bit more geared towards kids and whatnot. Vito, did you have? How did you end up playing this back then?
So I didn't own a Super Nintendo when I was a kid. I just had NES and the handhelds. So the only two people I think I knew that had a Super NES was you two guys, right? So I played it at your house, Don, I believe, quite a bit. Now, did you own it back then?
No, so that's what's funny is I didn't own this for a really, really long time. This was one of those games where I instantly fell in love with like the box art, right? Yeah. And when friends often had it, so I usually would borrow it from Deucy, I would say most of the time.
Yep.
Because I don't know if any of my other friends had it, so it was always a treat because we'd always swap games, and I always borrowed it for him. So that's likely how you played it.
Yeah, so I probably played Deucy's copy
at my house.
So, but yeah, it just it might have been the first Mode 7 Super NES game I played, and I remember just looking at it and thinking it like blew my mind back then.
Yeah,
and just to have Mario in a racer, because like Deucy said, I was still kind of really am not into racing games, but this was the first one that caught my attention because of the Mario characters, and I just have a lot of memories, racing, with you, competing or doing battle mode, but it was the first racing game I was into. I wish I owned it when I was a kid because I probably would have sunk a lot more hours into it.
Me too, yeah.
But yeah, it's like you said, it's the OG, and it's a classic to this day. I'll still pop on and play it on Nintendo Switch Online every once in a while.
Yeah, this one's really playable. It's definitely aged, that's for sure. I mean, it's a 33-year-old game at this point, but it's really fun. It's one of the more approachable kart games, and also is unique for the time because in one single player you only had half the screen to look at because they was constantly split screen, so the bottom half would have the track with your other opponents and whatnot, which was kind of cool. That was a cool gimmick to kind of compensate for only having half a screen.
Didn't they do half a screen because of like frames? Like they needed it to run smoother
for the frame rate. Plus, this is so focused on being a 2-player game that was their compromise. It's like you have to deal with half the screen no matter what.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. And it never really dawned on me. I always just thought, well, this is natural. This is how it should be on Mario Kart, is with the map down at the bottom.
Yeah,
I think I also played this before I ever played F-Zero. And it didn't dawn on me then that they were both mode 7. Like they very much felt like two different racing games. And like you said, it was more difficult on F-Zero because the sense of speed was really there compared to Mario Kart.
Oh, easily. Like this, I mean, F-Zero was like night and day compared to this game. So and F-Zero was hard. Like I remember playing that because a friend got it for his birthday or something like that. Like he got Super Nintendo and F-Zero. I was like, this game is hard. I don't know what I'm doing. It also controls really weirdly because I think Mario Kart is easier to control. Like, granted, I think the drifting is a little bit weird, but also it's like, it's also mode 7 drifting at the same time too.
I think what helped with Mario Kart is adding the hop, because then you could tell where the sliding was definitely going to start.
Yeah.
Whereas F-Zero, if you tried to do like a slide or turn or anything, it just like shot to the left or shot to the right.
Because that one, like you had to learn, like you kind of had to, feather the gas while you're, using the R to turn or whatever, or L. And Mario Kart was a lot more simple because you're right. Like you had the hop, which sometimes I think, could you jump over turtle shells and whatnot back then?
If you timed it very, very well.
That's what I thought, because I feel like we've done that before.
It was like very pixel perfect.
Yeah, like we all would try to and fail, but then when you did pull it off, it was really awesome looking.
And somebody called you a cheater.
Yeah. Yeah, so this game, really fantastic. I still enjoy it quite a bit. It hasn't aged as well as I liked it would have, but at the same time, it's one of the earlier Super Nintendo games. Like Super Nintendo came out in 91 here in the US, and this was within the first year, but it's a damn great first year game, I would say.
Yeah, I didn't realize how early it was because I didn't get a Super Nintendo that early. I think I got this probably around in 93 sometime, or even 94. It might have been closer to Donkey Kong Country time. But like Vito said, it's really easy to get back into on the Switch. For me, at least, the muscle memory is surprisingly still there.
Yeah, plus, again, it does give you a really great nostalgia kick, too. Like, it does scratch that itch because it's still really colorful. It looks really great. The music is fantastic.
I was going to say, when the music hits your ears, you're just immediately transported
back.
Exactly,
yeah, especially for us, yeah. So, Vito, where did you rank this on your list?
So, I ranked this kind of purely out of nostalgia at number 3.
Yeah,
I think it fits in right there for
podium finish.
I know. I thought it would be kind of high on at least one of our lists, and I figured it would be on
it's
yours.
mainly. I mean, it is a really good. It's like it's aged a little bit, but it still is a really fun and good game. And mainly for the nostalgia, I put it at number 3 for me. Yeah.
Deucy, where did you put it on your list?
Also for nostalgia and being able to still play it, I stuck it up in top 4. I put it 4th. Just because the 3 above it are also heavy on my memory list.
Yeah, this whole list, I thought it was going to be kind of easy because I knew what I was going to put at least in top 3. But then the more I was kind of figuring out, I was like, well, this is a lot harder than I thought because some are written... they're riding high because of nostalgia, perhaps, or because they actually play really well.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to rank this, but I feel like I put it right in the middle where I put it. I put it at number 5, which I feel like is a good spot for this on my list.
That's good. Top 5.
Yeah, so we got 3, 4, and 5, which I think is a solid start for this list.
It's all perfectly reasonable for this game.
Absolutely.
It could go in any one of those spots.
Yeah.
But no lower.
No lower.
Agreed,
no. That's
How
fair.
dare you?
Yeah. All right, guys. So the next one we're covering is a big one for all of us because I have a lot of memories of this one. This is Mario Kart 64, released February 1997. I remember when I got this because I got the N64 and I got Mario Kart with it. I was one of those people who played Mario 64 so much at Blockbuster that I just didn't buy it when I got an N64. Like I wanted Mario Kart, so I had this, and this was the only game I had for like a month and a half where it was because Deucy would come over almost every weekend, and we were switching up the controller on GPs and Grand Prix modes to like. Get our fill because it was just one controller for like a month. And I remember my mom got back from Kmart with the black controller, which I still have. And we just completely lost our shit at that point because we finally were like, we could do 2-player. It's finally happening.
And then for the rest of that day, we only played 2-player. I don't
Yeah.
think we switched over to any other game.
No, so this game is significant. But what are the memories you guys have for this game?
For me, it was also my first N64 game. We happened to find a bundle at Costco. So it was the N64 itself was less expensive than other places, and it came with Mario Kart. I think I still had to get a controller separate.
I forgot if they did it because I know some Costco bundles eventually included that, but I don't remember if back then they did.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure I had to go to like EB at the time or Software Etc. and get another controller. Also, I had to get the AV adapter for my TV.
Oh, that's right. The
consoles,
RF adapter.
Yeah, the consoles did not come with those back then, or at least that one didn't. And then, yeah, I was the same way. I just played that nonstop because it was my only game until a little bit later that year GoldenEye would come out. And then that's all I really needed was those top two. But Mario Kart 64, I wish there was a timer based on it like Stardew keeps track of. I want to see how many hours I put into that game because I just played it nonstop. Even when I got later systems, I would go back to it and play it. It's a little rough now, actually. For some reason, it's easier for me to go back to the Super Nintendo version than it is the N64 one.
That's surprising because for me, it's the opposite. I actually have an easier time getting into the Mario Kart 64 than I do Super Mario Kart.
I don't know. I think it's because this originated the power slide that we all know, where you can get a boost off of it, but it did it weirdly compared to modern Mario Karts. So my muscle memory is more like, oh, I remember the sliding being weird on Super Nintendo. And when I get back to 64, I'm like, this shouldn't be a problem. Uh-oh.
Vito, what are your memories of Mario Kart 64?
So Mario Kart 64, I believe, was the second N64 game I got. The first one was Shadows of the Empire, which you guys did an episode on that a while ago. From what I recall.
That was like episode 5. That's way back.
Yeah. Another time I'll tell you the story about how I ended up with the paparazzi at Brooke Shields' wedding right after I got Shadows of the Empire, but that's for another podcast.
Oh my god!
Anyway,
damn.
Yeah. Mario Kart 64 was my second Super Nintendo N64 game, and I remember playing it at your house. And I think I'd bring my controller over, but we played it there. Did battle mode.
Battle mode was a huge improvement in this one.
Yeah,
because they had 4 distinct battle levels. And they had verticality, which was a big thing. Like I think it was Block Fort, right, where you could.
That was my favorite.
Yeah, you could set bananas all along the ramps and whatnot.
Yeah. But it seemed like everyone I knew. Well, first of all, everyone I knew had an N64, and everyone I knew had Mario Kart. So before GoldenEye kind of blew up, we'd always play Mario Kart, the battle mode and stuff, and that was kind of like our cooperative, competitive game that we'd play, But I have just a lot of memories playing it with you, my cousin Michael, like just like other friends. Like it seemed like everyone had it, and it was actually the first time I actually got good at the drifting or whatever you want to call it. It was in that game because I couldn't do it on Super Nintendo when I was however old, 6, 7 when that game came out. But yeah, just a lot of fond memories from that middle school era playing this with a lot of different people prior to GoldenEye when that captured our attention.
Yeah, I think this is the one I have the most nostalgia for by far. As much as I love Super Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo. Also, this has so many memorable tracks and shortcuts. Because I think that was the big thing, too, is at least I think some shortcuts were intended. There was a lot that we found out through Nintendo Power and whatever else that seemed like they were not. And there were some that were definitely not, like in Mario Stadium, where you could basically cut through the track in about 20 seconds if you know how to do it right.
It was basically glitching it because when you jumped over the wall, the track hadn't loaded in yet until you land on it. Also the one on Rainbow Road where you can just jump off the side.
Yeah.
Like you cannot get away with that now because Lakitu will immediately grab your ass.
And that one was really fun because you would risk it. Like, because if you miss it, because it was at a specific point on that first ramp, if you missed it, you'd have to play a lot of catch up. But if you landed it, you were well ahead of anyone else.
You didn't have to do it anymore after that.
Yeah, you were ready, which would sometimes encourage us to others to make that same risk. It's like, well, I'm not going to catch them. I guess at this point I have to try, right? So that's what was kind of fun. Is like we got so good at where we knew the shortcuts and how to manipulate them. Like there's a great one in Roller Raceway where you're going off the ramp and you bonk off of something.
Off the mountain on the side.
Yeah, and that transports you back on the ramp. Like a lot of goofy stuff that we didn't know any better. We just like, oh, this is cool. This is stuff they added. And then I remember like as they would release more Mario Kart games, I was like, why aren't there more shortcuts? And it took me a while to realize like, no, they weren't really intended that way.
Yeah.
They weren't meant to be played.
There was only
sense.
the one on Koopa Troopa Beach where you're supposed to go off that ramp into the little
Yeah.
cave. That was like the only one they really intended you to do.
That one was the most obvious. Yeah, and anything with like involving a ramp like was designed there, and the ones that we got good at were just not intended to be used. It was just like physics manipulation or whatever other glitches.
There's even more that have come up that we never knew about back in the day, but they require like weapons and things where you're like on Mario Circuit and you can shoot yourself with a red shell at just the right way to knock you over the wall,
which is crazy.
I'm pretty sure that's why they took out the feather from the Super Nintendo version to this one, because they knew that super high jump would just get you over every shortcut possible.
Yeah.
You did. I just want to say the Rainbow Road in Mario 64 is my favorite Rainbow Road. And even, when they redid it for Mario Kart 8, that's how I imagined it when I was a kid. Like, it's just great. I love that track.
Yeah, that's that one is my favorite Rainbow Road. I actually like how long of a course it is. I don't mind that. I mean, it's an endurance run, but I also think it's really cool and fun because the music, the graphics, like it just feels great. So anytime I play Rainbow Road after that, it's always like, well, how's it going to measure up to Mario Kart 64, right?
The Rainbow Road back then always reminded me of the Electric Light Parade at Disneyland.
You're just like in the vast nothingness and just seeing lights.
And then it was just lights constantly flashing at you. I feel like they should have kept it as a 3-lap race in Mario Kart 8 because now the cars go faster. And there's a lot more happening. Like you have a lot more places to pick up weapons and boosts. So you can easily get through that track a lot quicker than back on the N64 days when you were just kind of putzing along.
I really like the Mario Kart 8 version. I just wish it was longer, and I don't know, it doesn't feel as right as the original one does.
Yeah.
But it's still a great recreation of it. I like it.
Yeah, they even kept the music, kind of remixed it.
Vito, where did you put Mario Kart 64 on your list here?
This was a no-brainer to put it at number 2 for me. I have the most nostalgia for this one because I owned it and played it the most, and like everyone had an N64 and everyone had this game. So there's a lot of different memories with different people playing this. A lot of hours spent with this, like I said, before GoldenEye.
I would love to see what our carts collectively had as far as time spent on this one. Deucy, where'd you put it on your list?
For a while there, I had it at number 2. But then I started remembering my actual top 2 are probably more playtime compared to you guys. So this one fell only to number 3.
That's fair.
Yep.
Yeah. And on my list, I put it number 2 basically for the same reasons you did, Vito, because this one, it's one I have just so many memories for. It's still so fun. I love most of the tracks in this game. Like there's, not everything's going to be a hit in every game, but I think I just have so many memories of like Toad's Turnpike, Warrior Stadium,
the Yoshi one, the
Yoshi
Valley.
Yeah, Rainbow Road. Like there's just a lot of great tracks in this game.
Oh, DK with the jump over the boat.
That's that's right. If you weren't going fast, if you could bop it and crash,
run into it. Yeah,
I remember we were trying to get on there, thinking there'd be like some hidden Easter egg, and you
just went right through it and died.
So number 2 at mine. I mean, this was a no-brainer. Number 2 for me. All right, so the next one we're covering is. This was significant at the time, I would say. This is Mario Kart Super Circuit, released August 2001 on the Game Boy Advance. My brother bought this at launch. I remember like he somehow convinced my uncle to buy it for him at Electronics Boutique. And this was a big deal for the time because Game Boy Advance had come out, I think, like summer 2001. And that was the closest approximation we could have to a portable Super Nintendo at the time because Game Boy had been out since '89, which is a wild length of time for a console beloved, especially a portable one. And they've had the Game Boy Pocket, which was a slight upgrade. That Game Boy Color, which was just a colorized version of the Game Boy hardware.
And weirdly, Game Boy Color sometimes felt like a step back compared to other Game Boy games.
Depending on the game, it was really I know it had a little bit better hardware than Pocket even, but it still looked and felt like a Game Boy game. So when the Game Boy Advance came out, we were excited all the possibilities of having a Super Nintendo in our hands. And Mario Kart Super Circuit was a huge game because we always wanted Super Mario Kart portably. And this was a close version of that where it was kind of like a mix of Mario Kart 64 and Super Mario Kart in some instances. Like even the graphics kind of look like Mario Kart 64 as far as the racers, but they look like they're almost like Super Nintendo courses, even though it was in Mode 7.
Yeah, it was flat tracks, but 3D people.
Yeah.
And 3D item boxes and stuff like that.
Yeah, so what'd you guys think of this one when it came out and if it holds up at all?
I'm pretty sure it was my first Game Boy Advance game. I might have gotten it with the Advance. And at the time, it was like you said, it was finally a Mario Kart portable, and that's all I cared about, because I loved the Mario Kart series, and I just wanted it. I wanted to be able to play it on the go, and up until that point, there was no possible way to do that. So I was fine with how it turned out, and some of the jankiness to it that you see today, you totally overlooked. You were just like, nope, it's Mario Kart.
Yeah, it plays great at the time. And I can have it wherever I want, even if I need a stupid warm light to see it.
Yeah.
For me, I had a Game Boy Advance, not for very long. I was stupid and sold it, but I didn't have this game. One of my high school buddies had it, and I only played it. It's one of the ones that I haven't played a whole lot of. It's like maybe a handful of times. And I just remember it being kind of, it was cool in the concept that you could have it to go. Like that I understand, and that was really the best thing about it for me. But I just remember it being kind of janky and a little bit weird, at least in my opinion. And so I didn't really play it that much. And yeah, I mean, I don't have, other than that, it wasn't one that I considered to be like a top one and one that I would really go back to and play today. So,
yeah, I struggle with this one because I have more fond memories of it than it actually is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you can play it now on the Game Boy Advance app on Switch, right? I think it is on there.
Yep.
So you could see the differences between Super Mario Kart, Mario Kart 64, and this game just, you'll play it to kind of see what it was for the time, but I can't see myself committing more time to it beyond that. Because back then I did play it a ton because you can unlock the 20 original courses from Super Nintendo, which was a huge selling point for me. Like, I mean, the fact that it was portable Mario Kart was a big enough selling point, but the fact that it basically includes every course from the original game was just a big bonus. Even though we discovered that, as you and I revisited, Deucy, that it was actually a pretty big grind. Like, you had to collect a ton of coins.
Yeah, I did not remember that. That was ridiculous. Like, you have to beat every cup with a gold, and then go back into it and collect 100 coins in every cup. And that's also every cup for every speed, like 50 through mirror.
Yeah.
Like,
and my brother and I did that, I guess. I'm sure we tag teamed it, but I forgot all that was involved in unlocking those Game Boy Advance courses. And at that point, you can argue how much it's worth it because it's so much to do that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even if you do, 50cc, 150cc, we'll say, 8 to 10 minutes to do a cup, depending on the race, right? And you do that 3 times over with, I think there's 4 GPs in there. Quite a bit of time. And then you have to go back to get 100
there's 5
coins.
now in this one.
Is there 5? Oh, that's right, because it's 4 per.
4 races per. Oh, my God.
So it's like 15 cups you have to win, get gold, plus the additional mirror.
Yep.
Plus go back and get 100 coins. So we did all that back then. And again, because it was probable in nature, it made it fine. But playing it today, 24 years later, it just doesn't hold up as well, I think. Like, it's a great sort of time capsule for what we were seeing on the Game Boy Advance at the time and the fact that it was a portable Mario Kart. But beyond that, you can't really put much time in this. I think even the courses don't make it so much. Like, I don't remember too many of the courses from this game.
I don't remember their version in this, but I do know that they were brought into like Mario Kart Wii and Mario Kart 8.
Yeah, Mario Kart 7 I think had some too.
But they were just totally redone and reimagined with like verticality and everything to it. So you didn't even need to go back to this anymore. And when I do, I'm like, oh wow, the sliding is a weird mix of, sure, you could do a boost like N64, but it's very loose and wiggly like the Super Nintendo one. And I'm like, I'm not used to this anymore. In fact, I played it recently on 150, and I got a gold with 3 second places and like a third or something.
That's surprising.
I didn't even win a race in there, and I somehow got first on points, and I was just like, ouch.
Yeah, it's a little bit harder to recommend, but it is fun for a little bit, like you'll kind of dip your toe in and be like, all right, that's kind of enough. Vito, where'd you end up putting this one on your list?
So I put it at number 8. I think it fit there perfect for me, just from my lack of kind of a lot of play time and the fact that I don't think it's bad necessarily. I just couldn't really get into it. So that's kind of where it fit for me, number 8.
Deucy, would you place Mario Kart Super Circuit?
I dropped it way down. It is 9th on my list because a couple other things more recently have bumped it down even further. I, like you, Don, I remember it more fondly than when I go back and play it. I'm like, oh.
Yes, my memories are a little muddled.
Yeah.
Those rose-tinted glasses need to be thicker, apparently. I put this at number 8 on my list, too, so we're all about in the same ballpark. again, this isn't a terrible game at all. It's just the other Mario Kart games are just better. So this is a great showpiece for the time, but beyond that, I won't get much mileage of it, unfortunately. I'd like to, but it's just it doesn't control very well. It's not the most, the sense of speed was kind of weak because again, it's on Game Boy Advance hardware. And really the biggest hook is like we've mentioned over and over so far. It was a portable Mario Kart in 2001, which hadn't been done before. The next thing we're covering, I feel like this one's a little bit divisive, actually. This is Mario Kart Double Dash, released November 2003 on the GameCube. This one, so I remember when this came out, we were pretty jazzed for it because, again, it was Mario Kart on the GameCube. It was the next generation of consoles, I should say.
But it wasn't even a launch title, so it took forever.
It came out a little while, yeah. So we had Mario Kart Super Circuit 2 years previous to this. That's a long break, and there's also, 6 years between Mario Kart 64 and Double Dash. That's a long time for Mario Kart to not exist. Granted, Mario Kart 8 is kind of doing the same thing, but nonetheless, regardless of that, what do you guys think about Mario Kart Double Dash?
I'll let Vito go first.
Yeah, and what do you remember? I guess we'll say. What do you remember, and how you enjoy it?
So again, this is kind of like a nostalgia pick for me because one of my high school friends, his younger brother had a GameCube. And my friend and I used to kind of hijack his GameCube to play Metroid Prime a lot. But we would play this with his two younger brothers, and I just have a lot of fond memories playing that with them. And I remember doing the, one person could drive and one person could control the rider on the back and throw shells and stuff. So I remember one brother would drive and then his other brother would, be the guy throwing the shells, and then me and my buddy would be in the other cart. So we'd have kind of competitive times with that. But just a lot of those memories are tied into this game. So that's kind of where it fits for me. Mm-hmm. I didn't own a GameCube, so I don't have a lot of
that's interesting. You didn't own a GameCube.
No, I didn't. I had a PS2, and that was pretty much it. But so I didn't get to play this at home, kind of by myself or whatever. But it was mainly whenever I went over to my friend's house. I'd play this with them, and just a lot of that time, a lot of fond memories for me. So that's kind of where it slots for me. But
yeah, so I guess we should mention, if you're not familiar, the big twist in this game is that it does emphasize 2 racers per cart, which was a really cool idea. I remember being pretty excited about that when we saw the previews and videos leading up to it. And you could also with 2 players, you could do 2 people per cart, so you could almost have a team up aspect, which was really cool. And then you could also swap places by holding Z.
Yeah.
And you could also, one person would manage items as we collect them. And this was the first time you could get 2 items on your cart at once, so you have almost like a backup weapon. And that was the big twist with this game. It's you had 2 people. You could do 4-player with 2 people per cart if you wanted to, or you could team up. There was a lot of cool ideas in this one, but I think some of them kind of fell flat, which I think where Deucy might chime in there. So, Deucy, how do you feel about Double Dash?
Get this out of the Mario Kart library. No, actually, when it finally first came out on GameCube, we were just so desperate for a Mario Kart since it had been 6 years and it wasn't a launch title, and it looks really good. It looks very smooth for the GameCube. It still looks really good today, but I ended up quickly not liking it because I was an only child and I played a lot of Mario Kart by myself. And this does not allow you to do that. Once you get into the higher difficulties of 150 and even Mirror Cup, they want you to do that co-op mode that you mentioned so that both players could do the power slide, or both players could make the cart turn sharper, and therefore you are going faster throughout the lap. And you just can't pull that off single player. It's really weird.
That's right. I forgot that there was an additional boost if you're synced. You're basically syncing your motions with another player. So when you would go to a power slide, if you both were kind of jiggling the stick at the right timing together, you get a bigger boost and turn more sharply, which I don't remember that back then, because I would feel like I probably got through single player and then didn't go beyond that, because a lot of my memories in this game are tied to multiplayer. We did play this quite a bit.
Yeah.
My biggest complaint with this game was the sense of speed. It felt like it was freaking slow even on 150. And I don't know, I haven't played Mario Kart 64 in a little while, but it just felt like when I played Double Dash, it just felt considerably slower than Mario Kart 64. That sense of speed just wasn't there. And as a result, there was just a little bit less chaos and freneticism, which I think could be a big piece of Mario Kart, depending on what the degree is, right? You don't want anything there's some instances like Mario Kart 8 where it's just too much chaos, right?
Well, that's why we found that Baby Park was what we always wanted to play was because that brought the chaos. And
that's the best course in this game for me.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And that one, I wish they did more because that was a unique course where it was just a straight oval, 7 laps, if I recall, was a default.
Yeah, I think so.
And it was just nonstop chaos trying to drift boost in everyone and use whatever weapons you had.
The course was so short that whatever you shot would end up somewhere on the course and somebody would run into it. And anybody could win. Like anybody from the top Mario Kart player to somebody who just picked it up that day, you definitely had a chance to win at that course as long as you were going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I feel like we found that a little later on in the game's life. We had already been playing other games for a long, like Halo had come out by then, and we were playing a ton of that. But that really extended the longevity of Mario Kart Double Dash.
It did, because the courses in here, the one I really vividly remember is the DK Jungle one, where you get shot through that big old barrel on the mountain.
Up onto the mountain, yeah.
Right, and I remember that being a pretty cool level. I don't remember, and I think there's like Peach's Beach or something like that.
There's the one that's like Delfino Plaza.
Yeah, so there's a couple standouts in here, but another thing too is like a lot of these tracks are really wide, I think to accommodate because there was more racers on the field, and there was 2 players per...
A lot of the weapons were huge, too. Like, DK had a giant banana. Bowser had a giant shell.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of cool ideas in this game, but I think mechanically, compared to other Mario Kart games, I just don't enjoy it as much.
I liked the aspect of you could choose your cart also.
Yeah, that was really
there
cool.
were some stats you could fiddle with.
Yeah, so it definitely had... I think this was a little bit geared towards younger people, which is weird to say because we were, like 18 at the time, 17, 18. But it was probably meant for like, 10, 11, 8 years old, whatever. So I think that's why maybe the sense of speed was kind of dwindled, or it just didn't feel like a great Mario Kart game, especially after all we'd been anticipating for so long, right?
There's a whole generation that grew up with like GameCube, PS2 as their first consoles, and so there is a lot of people out there on YouTube that are saying like, "Oh, Double Dash is the best. We want to go back to Double Dash," and for us, that's like. And Mario Kart 64, where
exactly
some people can't play Mario Kart 64 anymore, and we're like, no, we can slip right back into this.
Yeah,
you made a really good point because I'm also an only child like you, so I think had I owned a GameCube and had to play this, kind of more so by myself than the experiences I had co-op with my friend that owned it, I think maybe it would have been lower on my list because that actually makes a lot of sense why it would be lower on some people's lists if you.
And I feel like Don probably played it with his brother or somebody that.
I usually play with my brother. If not, my brother and I would come over to your house or our friend Matt's house. We were almost always playing at least 2 or 4 player with this game.
Yep.
Yeah. Vito, where'd you put Mario Kart Double Dash on your list?
So kind of like I said, purely out of nostalgia, a lot of fond memories. It's at number 4 for me, which is probably kind of high, but that's
it's fine. There's no high or lows here. Really, it's just it's all preference because I'm sure there's a lot of people who might be listening out there who would put it at number 1, and that's a perspective too. Maybe not one I agree with. Deucy's a little harsh on this one. I'd say I don't even agree with this.
And for me, I gave it 1 point.
Yeah,
it is dead last 10, on my list.
Number 10, which I was even surprised because I knew you didn't love this game that much because we almost never play. We never play it really ever again. Like after back then, it was. I don't think we revisited it for nostalgia or anything. So I feel like I knew that you weren't too fond of this one, but I was surprised. I was like, oh, dead last kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you don't need to anymore. A lot of the tracks have been redone on Wii and 8, and like even your favorite Donkey Kong one is now there, and they're so much better because they're solo drivers.
Yeah, so I put this at number 7 on my list. I feel like that was the right spot for it, where I don't dislike this game necessarily. It's just like we just said. It's just I don't think I'll revisit it anytime soon because I haven't revisited it in probably 20 years. I don't know the last time we played this one. It maybe is if my brother wants to come up and we'll play it or something like that, but it's not something I would go back to.
And then we'll just do Baby Park.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I feel like 7 was reasonable for that game because I don't think it's terrible, but I also don't think it's better than any of the other Mario Kart games on my list. The next one is Mario Kart DS, released November 2005 on the DS. This one, I don't know about you guys, but I was pretty excited when this came out because, again, we had another portable Mario Kart coming. And the big thing with this one is it was one of the first and earliest Nintendo DS games to be online because this was when Nintendo, ironically, their infrastructure is still crap, whatever it is, like 20 years later, because this is pretty bad here with archaic friend codes and whatnot. But at the time, this was the coolest thing ever because you could play Mario Kart online, assuming you had a router or you bought the dongle that Nintendo sold, which you could put. It was like a USB dongle that would basically act as like a hotspot, so you could connect your internet. McDonald's also partnered with Nintendo where they had Wi-Fi hotspots in their restaurants.
Oh yeah,
so you could connect your DS and get a Big Mac meal or Happy Meal or what have you. You know, so I know that was the big hook of this game. It was on the DS, so it did have some gimmicks with the bomb screen that kind of remind me of Mario Kart, where it's like it had your track information and racers on the bottom.
Yeah, that was always a welcome addition.
I love that in DS
because
games,
they didn't really go the gimmick way of things that a lot of DS games did. They were just like, here's a map, here's some information. I think maybe did you have to tap the screen to shoot your weapon? I don't even know. If
you could. I mean, it might have been an option. I don't know, but I think the racers top 4 were on the left as well. Like it was just an information screen, which is fine.
Yep.
The racing was it felt great. It was a step up over Super Circuit by far.
It felt a lot quicker than Double Dash.
It did. There was a great sense of speed. The graphics, I think DS games in general are kind of hard to, they age poorly in most instances because they do look like Nintendo 64, which doesn't age well either in most respects. But for the time, it looked pretty damn good for a DS game. It played really well. I remember putting a lot of time with this one. And this one continued the tradition as well, where it had, what was it? It was 16 courses that were sort of, brand new to the game. And then it had a mix of retro courses, 16 retro courses from essentially the entire franchise, which is a trend that I'm glad they've continued to the current one.
Yep.
But how did you guys feel about Mario Kart DS when that one came out?
I liked it. Yeah, I was happy that there was another portable Mario Kart. In fact, I had a DS when I had my first job at the Maritime Museum, and I played this a ton while I was working there. And my DS was the backwards compatible one, so you could put a Game Boy Advance game in the bottom slot. So I would have Mario Kart DS and then Super Circuit both together at once, and
I would both flavors. You had a little Neapolitan.
I would switch off back and forth between them, but. Yeah, I don't really remember or care too much about the online capability of it. I think I played it once or twice. The issue with it was that people could snake.
Yeah, so...
Then that was a killer. I was like, well, this defeats the whole purpose.
And the snaking in that game was really bad because I played online quite a bit, and I got okay at snaking. But the hard thing with snaking is... You're using, I guess it kind of breaks the physics of the game, but you're sort of power sliding and holding the direction left and right, back and forth over and over and over. I guess this builds up your speed in a sense to where you can go, like speeds that you should never be able to attain in a Mario Kart game. But there's some people online who got really good at it, and it's like they would just, sprint off the track and you'd never see them again.
Everybody would be lapped by lap 2.
Exactly. So people who are really good with it broke the game, just made it not fun. So I totally understand why you wouldn't play it online, because at that point it's like, well, the best they'll do is second at that point, right? And it was a little bit spotty. Like, I make fun of internet or Nintendo Switch's online internet now. And back then it was their first foray into it. And it was over a 2005 Wi-Fi. So they did have a little bit of lag and, latency that was not fun to deal with either.
I don't really have a lot to add for this one. I didn't own a standard DS. None of my friends had a standard DS. I think maybe the only time I ever really played this game was at a Target kiosk that had a DS that had the game in there. I remember on the brief times I did play it, it felt better than Super Circuit to me.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of really the extent of my experience with this one. I don't really have too much more to add than what you guys already have said about it, to be honest.
Yeah, this one, it's a good portable game. I would say if you have a DS and you want to revisit it, this is a lot easier to revisit than some of the other games.
It was nice that it added the 3D aspect to the levels. Like a lot of them had hills and stuff, so they could recreate even the N64 tracks.
Yeah,
they could bring back some of those.
And that's what worked about it, is they'd have some of the N64 tracks in the retro packet included, and that's what made it fun. It's what I wish Super Circuit actually was compared to the Mario Kart 64 or Super Mario Kart.
Yeah.
Where this was like Mario Kart 64 2 in a way, but with better controls, better graphics, and better everything, essentially. Vito, where'd you place this on your list?
So merely because of my lack of experience with it and the fact that I thought it was better than Super Circuit, I put it at number 7.
Yeah, that's
so it's just right above Super Circuit.
Yeah. Deucy, where'd you place DS?
It just missed out on the top 5. I put it at 6, kind of right in the middle. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it, but once we talk about future games, it got replaced pretty easily.
Down.
Yeah.
I put this at number 4 on my list. I was actually pretty favorable to this one because it had online. I played a ton when I was back then because I would take my DS to work sometimes and play it on my breaks. It was just something, again, it was a great portable Mario Kart, and it finally played really well. And I think it holds up frankly, like, there's obviously better games, but I think for the time, it was a really solid portable game. It had online. It did everything kind of right, I would say.
Yeah.
I wish that snaking didn't exist, but 2005 game, sometimes that's what happens. You have no way to patch those things out. So
They had no idea people were going to find that.
yeah, they're like, oops.
I think that also happened to that very first Sonic racing game, the Sonic All-Star Racer or whatever.
I can't remember if that had a snaking issue or not. I don't remember.
There was some problem with it where when you went online, somebody could just jump out way into the lead for some reason.
It would not surprise me, to be frank with you. I would not put it past that kind of game to do that kind of shenanigans. Yeah. The next game we're covering, it's one of the more unique Mario Kart games, that's for sure. This is they released a few of them, but we're kind of going with the earliest date we have here. So there's Mario Kart GP Mario Kart Arcade GP released October 2005, and then they had updates over the years, which was in Mario Kart Arcade GP2 in 2007. And then one of the more recent ones that's more commonly found all over North America is Mario Kart Arcade GP DX, which was released in late 2013. There's also one that we don't really touch on. It's called Mario Kart Arcade GP VR. It was released in 2017. This is a very limited release by Bandai Namco in their VR zones, I guess in Tokyo, and there's some locations in Europe. But this is one of those, I don't know if it's an augmented VR thing or what it is. I haven't really looked it up. But it costs about $40 for one play. So I don't know what kind of experience that entails.
Is that one of the ones where like you want to get an item, so you hold your hand up and you collect the
I have
item?
no idea.
I remember
looked it up
when it first came out, people were talking about that, and I couldn't tell if it was like because the Super Nintendo world wasn't out yet in Universal, so I couldn't figure out where people were playing this or how, or if it was like a one-time thing. But apparently, it's like a regular arcade game.
Yeah, so I should look that up and I'd be curious what that's all about. But for our purposes, the biggest one we're talking about are the main arcade games, which you'll find at like Dave & Buster's, and they take up a lot of space. They're full blown like sit down arcades, and more often than not, you'll see at least a pair of them, if not four. And they're very much like an arcade experience. So you pay $1 or whatever it is, $1 or $2 to play one race. You can, I think in some of them you can unlock a rainbow cup by completing the previous 5 cups, which is about 10 races. So good luck getting first and not having to spend more money to get through that, right? They have all the Mario Kart characters. There's a small variety of tracks that seem like they're kind of inspired by previous Mario Kart games. They're just arcadified and more wider, and I think sometimes a little bit more chaotic here too, because it's meant to be a sort of a more chaotic arcade experience.
Oh yeah, you definitely have more of a chance to make a comeback in this one. I don't know if it's rubber banding so much as like the weapons are devastating.
Yeah.
Or the recovery from getting hit with a weapon is a lot tougher than in the console games.
Yeah. So how do you guys feel about Mario Kart Arcade GP?
I love it. I mean, it's one of the few games where no matter where we're at, if there's at least 2 or 4 hooked up and I'm with a group, I'm like, we got to play that. Like, no matter what else we're doing, we're like, no, we got to do at least one round on those things. Mm-hmm. It's funny because like if my wife had a ranking, she would definitely put this as number 1 because it's the only one that she can beat me at.
Yeah, I guess that's a reasonable qualifier. Yeah. Vito, what's your experience with Mario Kart Arcade?
Mainly when I lived in San Diego, the Dave & Buster's in Mission Valley had it. And I just remember going in there, seeing the massive, cabinet with the sit-down chair. And it, it's fun and it looks good. But like you said, it's like $1 or $2 per play. And to me, it's like I'd rather, play something else for a quarter and get more plays out of it than and do that. Because, arcades, like they're meant to suck your money
by design.
By design.
Yeah.
So you're going to be sinking in a lot of money if you want to try to unlock, the more cups or whatever. So it's not bad. I don't know. That's kind of where I rank it, just for various reasons.
That's how I feel about it, because we do play it when we're in the few times we're at an arcade these days.
Yeah,
and it is fun for the race. And then for me, I'm at a point where like, all right, that was $1.
Right.
I don't think I'm going to put another $2 or $3, $4, $5 in here, because it does play really well. It's a really great experience for what it is. And I do love the gimmick where it has a camera built in, so you could take your picture, and then it has like a Mario Kart character like Donkey Kong. I always play Donkey Kong. He's my main in all these games. But he has, there's a sort of an overlay where he has like his ears, so your face sits in it. Or there's Mario or Luigi's hats, right? And when you take the photo, and nose, right? So it does have these really great gimmicks, I think, make it a cool arcade game. But overall, it's not something I would play often or seek out, because also you have to be in an arcade, which... it has to be there and everything, and it's better in groups, because if you play this by yourself, you play like one race, I'm like, all right,
I'm I'm not playing it to get to the Rainbow Road. I'm just like, oh, I have friends here, and we all like to beat up on each other in games. So, and also, I don't know, like, you never really notice the price of games now because everything's put on a card.
Well, of course, because now everything's some sort of made up number or conversion. So it's like, it may not be $1, but it might be 10 stars. So it's like, oh, that's $1, whatever the hell it is.
But also with inflation, like no arcades, unless you go to some like retro arcade place where they're like, here, $10 for all day play, which is awesome. But like games now, if you go to a Dave & Buster's or like a Round One or something, all games are ridiculous when it comes to swiping that card.
Oh, of course, yeah. Which is a big reason why I don't go to them, because I'm always like, well, I just hang out at home. I have all those games here for the most part. Yeah. But Vito, where'd you put Mario Kart Arcade GP on your list?
You know, kind of for the reasons I specified, the price and the fact that, you know, it's kind of meant for you to lose and drop more money in there. I put it at number 9.
Deucy, where'd you put it on your list?
Mine, it's low, even though I do really like them. But it's going at number 8 because I definitely, like I said, I will play them if I see them more so than Super Circuit or Double Dash.
I put this at number 9. I feel like it's that's the only spot it could be, frankly. For basically the reason we just kind of talked about, where I'll play it for the fun of it, right? But it's not something I'll play continually because, you know, like there's obviously a lot of criteria that I factored into my list, and one of them is how much I would play it. And this one I just wouldn't play that much because it's hard to access. And it's expensive, frankly, like $1 for a race, cool, or whatever the hell it is, you know, but you do really need more people to play it to enjoy it. It's just not something that I could see myself enjoying for long periods of time. Because I play it, you know, like you said, anytime we were at the K, we always play at least one race.
It's kind of replaced the old, the NASCAR one that we always did.
Yeah, which I wish was around more because I really love that one.
Yeah.
That was really freaking cool. And that was also the same thing. It's like $1.50, but you get your fix of it for the 1 or 2 races.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, the next game is a pretty big one, I would say. It's Mario Kart Wii, which was released April 2008 on the Wii. This was, let's see, it had 32 courses, which continued the tradition of the previous games where it had 16 new courses and it had a mix of 16 retro courses. So how did you guys feel about this one back on the Wii?
Well, you'll find out in my ranking that I really liked this one.
I figured, yeah. I knew this was going to be high on your list when we were talking about this.
I'm pretty sure I got it like day one. It also, I don't think it was a launch for the Wii. The
Wii was out 2006.
Yeah.
Like November 2006.
It came pretty late, just like freaking Double Dash. But when this one came out, oh my God, it was so much fun. It was like what the next evolution of console Mario Kart should have been. And then years after that, even after we got like Wii U's and Xbox Ones and all that, we would still go back and play this in like a couch competition sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Even though it did have online, and the online was okay. It was getting better.
It was better than the DS, obviously, and it was playable. That's really the biggest thing. Like, it was fun and playable, which is all we could ask for on the Wii.
But for when it came to the Wii, like, it didn't rely too heavily on the motion control gimmick. So it was a lot easier for a group of people to come together and just pick up and play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, I remember I played this game a lot when I was in college. When I was at San Diego State, I worked for the police, and I was a community service officer. And all of us community service officers, we were all kind of nerdy, and we all had Wiis, which was interesting. And I remember we would throw parties, and we would play this at parties. You know, probably where we drank too much, so it was even more fun. You know, but I just remember just having a blast with it, and I liked the little steering wheel that you could put the Wii.
Oh, you're a big fan of that?
Yeah, I just thought it was cool. But like I said, I was drinking at a college party, you know, and
you were drinking and driving the Safeway.
Yeah, drinking and driving the Safeway. But yeah, just a lot of fun at those parties with my former coworkers and. Being in college, a lot of good memories with it. I always had a blast playing it, and like I said, I like the little steering wheel.
I remember too. This was the first time that the versus mode got a lot of options, so you could do like team battles and stuff like that. You could have the red versus blue team. It was like 8-on-8 or something like that, or 6-on-6, and it also allowed you to pick the number of courses and whether they were random or you all pick them. So like. I would sit down with Mike and Randy at the time, and we would just do marathons of every track possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, full 32 racers. I kind of had the issue I would Double Dash Deucy on this one, which is why I didn't put it so high on my list, is because I had moved away at this point. I was living in the Bay Area, and I didn't have many people to play with this at all. So the few times I would get to play with you guys, it was an amazing time. And for the same reason, like you mentioned, like I really liked that it didn't heavily rely on motion controls. It was actually a thoughtful mechanic here, where it's like you could waggle the nunchuck, and you would do like a flip or a stunt off a ramp, which would give you a speed boost. Or you could do the Vito steering wheel thing, which I never really used because I just felt like I was actually in less control at that point. But it was included because, again, it was meant to be...
made it more fun.
Yeah, it made it more fun for a lot of people. But for me, this one, I really enjoyed it. I just, because of my playtime with it, I just couldn't enjoy it as much as you guys did. But Vito, where'd you put this on your list?
So I put it at number 5. I think it slots in there perfectly. It could probably be flipped with Double Dash and go. You
can see me change it.
Yeah,
it seems to be rooted in the same sort of social setting for you there.
A lot of this is based on nostalgia. I feel like, and it's kind of the
is.
level of nostalgia where it kind of slots in there. So yeah, number 5 for me. On
Deucy, I knew this was going to be high on your list. Where did you place this one?
This one is what bumped 64 out of the spot. It went in at number 2 because of just all the playtime with it and all the memories.
I figured it was going to be really high for you because I knew how much time you'd put into it, and I figured that it was going to be a lot different than what mine was. So
I was going to say, for the longest time after we had already passed, we were still going back to playing that and Smash Brothers on the Wii.
Yeah. I had put this at number 6 on my list, so just below, I guess we'll call average. It's really good. It's just the other games on my list were better for me. That's all it is. Yeah. All right, the next one here is a big portable one again. It's Mario Kart 7, released December 2011 on the 3DS. This one looks really fantastic. It utilizes the 3D really well. The 3D slider on the 3DS. It doesn't rely too much on motion controls that I could recall, at least, as far as the touchscreen stuff. But what is your guys' experience with this one?
You know what it was? I think it's like in Mario Kart 8 where you have those 3 little things, and one of them is you can adjust it so that the controller moves.
Oh, the gyro?
Yeah, so I think that was an option in
the assists.
In Mario Kart 7. You could make it so that the gyro of the system also steered it. So knowing me, I always turned that off. Mm-hmm. But I really enjoyed it. I feel like this was the start of modern Mario Kart. Maybe Wii was too. Both of them combined is what became Mario Kart 8.
Yeah.
And also it was a bonus that it was portable.
Yeah. For me, I had a 3DS and I owned this game, and I remember the 3D, like you mentioned, the slider, having it in that 3D was really cool to me. And it introduced a lot of things that carried over into Mario Kart 8, like the glider and the underwater. And it also had a first-person mode that I remember, which I thought was pretty cool to see in a Mario Kart game. So, it is very good. And but the thing is, I don't have a lot of co-op memories of this game. It's more like
me neither. I've never played multiplayer on this one. Yeah.
I don't even think I did the online for it or anything.
Yeah,
I haven't played online because, frankly, I got this pretty late. I got this within the last 2 years or so. And when I played it, I was actually really impressed with it because it looks really freaking nice. 3DS has really nice games in general, but this is obviously a standout because it's really bright, it's vibrant, it makes really great use of the 3D effect, and it really is a precursor to Mario Kart 8 in a lot of ways, as far as how the game feels, the graphics style in a lot of instances. I like the courses in this game. There's also some retro cups you can unlock. So this was a really damn great Mario Kart game. It also introduced swappable car parts, because I think that was the big thing.
Yep.
We do that, right? True. I don't think we did that one.
Yeah, it did. We did also, because I remember we would sit there for not hours, but sitting there going, "What's the best stats?"
Okay, so that's what I thought. Yeah,
but both, like I said, we and 7 combined to give us what 8 is.
Yeah, and 7, I think this was the first game to include the parasailing kind of stuff, right, where you could float.
Yeah, that I think so.
And I think that's where I remember the first person view thing, Vito, is I kind of recall seeing the pointed end of your
glider.
Yeah, and I think you used a gyroscope to kind of swing in the air. So that was really cool. But I put this pretty high on my list. But Vito, where'd you put this on yours?
I put this at, looks like, hold on, number 6. Number 6.
Number 6. That's a good spot for it.
Fits in there for me. It's enjoyable, but like an idiot, I sold my 3DS, so I haven't played it in a really long time.
Yeah, 3DSs are getting kind of pricey too. It's really really crazy how those things are still like $200+. It's really crazy. Deucy, where'd you put it on your list?
A solid top 5. It's number 5 on my list because, like I said, it was the start of something that we know today.
We all have a mix. I feel like there's one game between all of us that is always like mixed up on our list, like it's higher than the other. But for me, I put this in number 3, and frankly, I was kind of surprised I put it there. But after replaying it, I realized how much, like I said, of a precursor is Mario Kart 8, and how good it feels and how good it looks, and it's just a really fantastic 3DS game above all else. It's just a really solid game all throughout. So number 3 is pretty high, but given the pedigree of the series, I'd say that's pretty damn good for a portable game.
Yeah.
The next one on our list, this is a big one, obviously, for many people. This is Mario Kart 8. It was originally released May 2014 on the Wii U, and then deluxe version that was released in April 2017, which is just after the Switch launch. And this game has 48 base courses plus 48 through the booster course pass DLC. So for our purposes, we're going to be rating the deluxe version because that's really the definitive, more current version, and that's, we don't want to split up the Wii U and the Switch versions. And then the deluxe version, some of the changes they introduced even before the booster course DLC was they overhauled the battle mode, because previous to this, the battle mode took place on actual race courses, which I'd never played the Wii U version, but that sounds like a truly awful time.
God, I think I played it like once or twice, but it was bad. Like, it did not make sense if you went to a regular race course, and they tried to space people out so you weren't immediately on top of each other, and they also tried to face you kind of towards each other so that if you just drove straight, you would eventually hit somebody. So all it took was for one person to turn around, and then you're just constantly chasing each other on the track in circles and not finding anybody, not shooting anybody. It was like really up to you to get the fun out of it, and it's like, no, throw me into an arena.
I remember the reviews at the time for the Wii version were really good, obviously, but I remember that was a sticking point for a lot of reviewers, was reading about this battle mode. I was like, how could you blow that up? I mean, how could you mess this thing up, Some of the other changes it added some new courses and modes. Metal Mario is the character in here. He gets a gold Mario suit. There's a new Inkling suit for the Mii Racers, because that was a big thing, was you had the Mii Racers, which were just your Mii's from the Wii version, but they could have these cool suits that were for other franchises. Like, by now they've added stuff like Samus and Mega Man and all kinds of cool Mii suits. They added King Boo, Bowser Jr., Dry Bones, and Inkling Boy. And then there was also a bunch of just online UI gameplay changes that were definitely for the better, from what I've read. Because I don't think anyone says like, oh, it was better in the Wii U version.
There was something to do with the items you could pick up too. Like, you can have 2 items in this. What Double Dash introduced, but back then you had to get the double block, I think, on the Wii U version to get the 2 items.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. If you had an item and then you hit another single block, it wouldn't give you a second item.
That seems very backwards and not nonsensical.
Yeah. It was just these little things that they tweaked that really made like Deluxe the end all be all of Mario Karts right now.
Yeah, this game, I mean, there's no way to really slice it. It's just truly amazing. It's still selling like hotcakes on the Switch 8 years later. I'm always seeing Nintendo and articles reporting like, oh, it sold like another 3 million copies at $60. And it's like, everyone's like, well, why don't Nintendo games go on sale? So because they're selling for $60 8 years later, right? It's unfortunate, but that's what it is. And then on top of that, they did something that I think shocked most people, where they released 48 additional courses, which is basically an entire new Mario Kart game. There's new characters. And it's all through the Booster Course Pass DLC, which was included for free if you had the Switch Online subscription, or it was $25, which for me, that's a steal. 48 courses for $25.
It was like a whole new Mario Kart game for just $25.
Yeah.
I was impressed with, like, it didn't just bring in courses from the past, which I would have been fine with, but there were even some original ones that they made specifically for this. They're still working on it.
They dug deep into the Mario Kart course bag, I guess we'll say, where it's like across all the series, including Mario Kart Tour, which is really great. So if you don't have much exposure to Mario Kart Tour, then you get some in here. Perhaps in a more ideal experience, because these are based on real world locations, and they also have a little bit of dynamism attached to it, where the courses change throughout the laps, which always throws me off no matter how many times I play them.
Those were the ones I had to practice the most before I did that tournament.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, Vito, how did you feel about Mario Kart 8? Did you play the Wii U one at all, or did you just go straight to Switch?
I had the Wii U one, but I didn't have it for very long, because and this is kind of a theme that's going through a lot of my information here, is that I sold it like an idiot. I sold my Wii U. So and then I got it when it came out on Switch, and that's where I have most of my experience with it. But for my experience and my money, this is the best Mario Kart game, and this is the one where I actually got into the online and was playing it a whole hell of a lot. And I thought I was actually pretty good until I played you guys that time, and I wasn't very good. But it just, I really just love, like, it just feels good. Like, I mean, the speed is there. It carries over the things from 7, like the glider. The courses are amazing. I really love the airport. What's it, Sunshine Airport?
Yeah.
Really
I love the
that
levels
one.
in here. They're really freaking good.
It's just really all around like a fun game, and to get the booster pack, which is, like you guys said, a whole nother game. 2 Mario Kart games basically in one. It's great. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, this really is the definitive Mario Kart in my eyes, and the online plays great. And I always have to stipulate for the Switch because the online Switch experience is garbage. Like, you don't have parties, you can't message each other. More often than that, like, we're in an Xbox party, or some other or PlayStation party while we're playing Switch games online because there's no voice chat. But despite that, the connection's fine. Like, any race we have, there's never an instance I can recall like, oh, look at this lag, or it's so bad, or whatever. It just works for whatever reason. And it's just a really great experience, online or offline. And co-op, I mean, if you're doing local co-op with everyone, it's a great time. There's a ton of options in here. There's 12 racers, right? Which
per race.
Which adds a little bit more to the chaos. There's all these modifiers, like you mentioned, that came from the Wii version, where you could set the frequency of items, the CPU difficulty. This is just the definitive, robust Mario Kart experience. So, Vito, spoiler for us, where'd you put this on your list?
Easily, it was number 1. There was no thinking about it.
Yeah, number 1.
Number 1. And I'll complete the circle at number 1. There's, in my eyes, you cannot get better than Mario Kart 8, and I'm excited for Mario Kart 9. It's just, my question, just like with the next Smash Brothers, is like, where do you go from here? Because you've packed just about everything you can imagine in this game. What are you going to do to differentiate these things? It could be 24 races for all we know. We don't know.
That's what they're hinting at from that look at the Switch 2.
Yeah.
People are like, look at all the little hash marks at the start line. There's like 24 of them. I also heard a random rumor. It was just a headline. I didn't click on the article, but they were like, there might be pit stops in this one. I'm like,
that'd be interesting.
Why and how?
I'm sure they'll make it some mini game or something like that. I could see some. That's the things with Mario Kart. Like, I don't think they'll fumble it. Like, Nintendo's really good about being concerted with their efforts, where it's like they'll take their time. They know what they're doing in most cases. It's really rare they have a miss, and even their misses aren't that bad. Like, they're just like, oh, this is just fine.
It led to, like, Double Dash. Even though I don't like it, it led to other things that are in current iterations.
Exactly, they're very good about what they're doing with their sequels. So I'm excited for Mario Kart 9, but Mario Kart 8 definitively for us, that was number 1 on our list, which I figure was a given.
It might not have been if they only had the Wii U version.
I'd be curious about that. Yeah, I'd be curious how our perspectives would be different, because that would be a much different experience than the deluxe version would offer. Yeah. All right, the final game we're covering today is also the most recent. It's Mario Kart Tour, which was released September 2018 on iOS and Android. This is a mobile-first game. This game is pretty massive for what it is, because it is a live service game, so there has to be a ton of content to support it. I would say one of the big significant selling points of this game is that there's 136 courses. They're not all accessible at once, as far as I know. I think they probably rotate them out in and out.
Oh, yeah, events. For sure.
Yeah. And, a lot of the courses here are based on real-world cities. That's always a hard word for me to say. And there's a ton of retro stuff, as far as I know, right, Deucy? I know you've spent more time on this one.
I was surprised when I finally picked it up, because at first I was dismissing it completely. I was like, I don't want an app game. I don't really play too many app games. But when I finally played it, it has a lot more retro love to it than I expected. I thought they were all going to be these city courses that came to Mario Kart 8. But there are some courses all the way back from the Super Nintendo, and they just added ramps and banks and things to it so that it fits with the style of play that Tour brings to the table. But I enjoy it all. I'm surprised. I really was pleasantly surprised with this one, that I'm perfectly fine with it. I play it every day, like right before bed, or if I'm just like sitting on the can. Like, it's good for that. It's whatever. Like, I don't even. It's surprisingly, it's faster than Double Dash. The speed.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
20 years later, where it's been. Yeah.
And unlike a lot of app games, I've never run into some sort of like pay to win wall. I feel like eventually I might get there, but as it is, when you start out, you just are constantly unlocking things, and it feeds that part of your brain where you're like, ooh, maybe one more spin on the wheel, like that sort of thing.
Vito, what are your impressions of Mario Kart Tour?
So, for anyone that knows me, If it's a mobile game, I'm probably out. Like, and when you add live service on top of that, I'm probably double out. I mean, for live service, the only one I really like is Helldivers 2.
I wouldn't call that a really live service game though. By nature,
true.
you have to pay that, and there are mission structures. It's not a free to play entry kind of point.
Right, right. So kind of, and for mobile games, the only mobile game I've sunk a chunk of time into, and by chunk of time I mean maybe like 2 hours. There's a 007 mobile game called Cypher.
I had no idea. That's funny.
It's literally on Apple Arcade. Like you have to have Apple Arcade to get it. And it's
that's why.
It's fun. It's fun, but I put like 2 hours into it. So because of that, I think I downloaded this app on my phone. I did one race, and then I was like, no, I'm done. And another reason for mobile games is I have a hard time without feeling the buttons.
You need that tactile control.
Yeah, I need tactile control. So when it's just using my phone with a flat screen, I have a really hard time playing it. So, this one and I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's way at the bottom for me.
That's pretty much how I feel about the game. I played this when it came out because I did want to try it just to give it a shot because they had Mario Run, which I think was before this, if I remember. I think it was 2017 or something like that. Didn't like Mario Run for a lot of reasons. I didn't like Mario Kart Tour. I didn't like in Mario Run, like he had like an auto run, and here it's an auto accelerate kind of thing. And you're also there's portrait mode which you can use, and then I know there is the landscape mode, like you have a tablet or something like that. I don't know if that was added after the fact. I'm not sure the history of this. So at the time, I played it for like you did, like a race stream. I was like, all right, not good, not for me. And I tried it within the last couple weeks when we were talking about this episode because like I have to at least try it again, and I hate this game because of the exact same reason like you, because it's a live service game. It's free to play. The controls aren't fun to use because you have your thumb on the screen all at once. You drift with that thumb as well. You have to tap it to use items. I do appreciate the fact that you can flick your thumb backwards to deploy the item behind you or forwards, right? And it's just a live service game, and I don't see myself investing time or money in this because it's just not fun to play at the onset for me. Like I just don't enjoy how this game feels. So I appreciate the amount of content it has because like you showed me, Deucy, that there's they've had all these skins on there, and like there's a Dr. Bowser skin which I thought was really great.
Yeah, that's
he
hilarious.
Looks exactly as envisioned. So I think that's the thing, is this game has to be constantly surfacing new content like that to keep people going, and that's the whole point, right? It's just keep you playing day after day to get your daily goals or your randomized. Was it pipes that are in this game or something like that? Right? They're like loot boxes.
Yep.
Right. So there's just too many life service elements in this game, and it's a mobile game by nature, so I already don't like it, to where it's like I can't place this any higher because I just wouldn't invest much time into it. That's not to say it's an awful game. It's just I'd rather play Mario Kart 8 on my Switch or or anything else portably. Vito, where'd you put this on your list?
It's at the bottom, number
That's
10.
what I figured. Yeah. Do you see break up the bottom of the
God
list?
I'm here, people. Yeah. there needs to be some love for this game. It's surprising, but I put it at number 7 because I like it better than the arcade game because we don't have access to the arcade game really, and I will definitely play this more often than Super Circuit or Double Dash. I'm never playing those.
And I would hook up, my GameCube is already hooked up. I would go through the effort of hooking up my GameCube to play Double Dash over this. No. So when me and Vito are playing Double Dash, you could play Mario Kart Tour on your phone.
And feel way more accomplished.
More accomplished. Yeah, you actually do that on the deck too. Yeah. So no surprise, I put this in number 10 on my list because again, I'm not saying it's an awful game. It's just an awful game for Donnie is all what it is. That's really what it is. So yeah, that's our total list here. So before we get into our list, we had reader Nick. He sent a list of his own Mario Kart games and how he ranked them. He only played 5 of them, which is why we didn't factor his into the scoring. But from least favorite to favorite, Nick put Super Mario Kart at number 5, Mario Kart 64 at number 4, Mario Kart Wii at number 3, Mario Kart Double Dash number 2.
Wrong.
And Mario Kart 8 and Deluxe at number 1, which is no surprise. So clean sweep.
You could tell that was sort of like a timeline of the game. It's like
it almost really was in release,
except for Double Dash, which I'm pretty sure he might have grown up with or something, like I mentioned earlier.
It's possible.
Each game kept getting better, so obviously you're gonna like them more.
Right.
Yeah. So for our final tally, we've tallied everything up. We've collected all of our scores, and this is the definitive ranking. So no one can really dispute this.
Yeah,
you can, but we'll play you in battle mode, or I'll play you in Street Fighter, and you will not win the argument.
No, I'll just play them in Mario Kart.
Or you could do that too. Yeah. Well, I meant specifically for me if someone challenges me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, All right. So the rankings here, we have at number 10 with 6 points, it's Mario Kart Tour. Number 9 with 7 points, Mario Kart Arcade GP. Number 8 with 8 points, Mario Kart Super Circuit. Number 7 with 12 points is Mario Kart Double Dash. Number 6 is Mario Kart DS with 16 points. Number 5 with 19 points is Mario Kart 7. Number 4 with 20 points is Mario Kart Wii. Number 3 with 21 points, just barely inching out Mario Kart Wii, is Super Mario Kart. Number 2 with 26 points is Mario Kart 64. And with a perfect score at number 1 with 30 points, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Overall, how do you feel about that list, fellas?
I agree. I mean, it's fair. I mean, it's good. You know, like I said earlier, a lot of these games could be interchanged, so I think it's a good list.
Yeah, I think it's pretty solid. Deucy?
Oh yeah,
I know. Yeah, I know. You have some favorites in that. Like, I feel like Double Dash at 7 probably ranked it pretty fairly objectively for you, maybe.
Yeah. Even with mine, luckily I was here to drag it down.
Yeah, that's true. It probably would have been a little bit higher.
It might have gone too high for me if I wasn't here. But I am happy with that podium finish. The 2 that started it all and the 1 that we're going to keep playing.
That's true. And I think, again, like, you know, all these games are fantastic in their own ways. It's just a matter of just what we prefer to play and just how it all shook out. I feel like that list is pretty tight and robust. You can argue, some people might argue maybe Super Mario Kart should be lower because it's older and doesn't age as well. But again, that's largely driven by nostalgia for us because we love that game no matter what after all these years.
Like I said, it really depends on if you have the muscle memory, if you grew up with it.
Absolutely, yeah. Because if you're going in blind, like you're someone who's like, you know, really young playing this first time, you're like, what is this crap?
Well, I've also played it recently on the Switch Online, and when I get up to 150cc, especially the Special Cup, oh man, that game hands me my ass.
Oh, I bet it does. It's a different feel in that game because of the Mode 7 stuff. Like it's kind of hard to break your mind from the fact that you're technically controlling the course, not the racer.
Yeah.
And it feels that way sometimes. Yeah. Overall, I think we did a pretty awesome job on our list. So anyone listening out there, if you want to dispute any of these rankings or perhaps give us your own list, please, you can reach us at LegionGamingPod@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram at LegionGamingPodcast, where I post my collection and other cool stuff, where you can reach us out there. Vito, thank you for joining us once again.
Oh, thanks for having me.
We'd
love to be here.
Of course, we always enjoy having you here. It actually worked out. We actually had a little mishap because we recorded this last week. Audacity decided to break itself or something.
Yeah.
So here we are re-recording it, but it worked out. We had Vito as a guest. And it worked out really well. Serendipitous, yeah. Do you see any final words for our Mario Kart friends?
Let's-a go!